And we're back. It's good to have you with us on this edition of, well, taking it apart and putting it back together as far as the news is concerned. Ziva Branstetter is here. Frontier Subscription on the web is where you'll find her work. And also, Charlie Biggs is here. I'll read it from the script. Anyway, Charlie has a great, that's what happens when the prompter doesn't roll and you're supposed to get the prompter, you see. Right. Anyway, Charlie has his own publication here in town. It can be found anytime you need it at Quick Trip. Am I right?
Yes.
And you're publisher, editor of everything. In fact, you're it.
That's it. Well, no, yeah, we have people to help us, but that's...
Anyway, it's called The Beacon,
right.
And that's where you'll find it. Normally, we have John Durkee here with Tulsa Public Radio. John is away this time, but will be with us again next month. Well, I think the big thing, obviously, is going to be the budget. But before we get around to that, let's go ahead and take on where you've been and what you've been up to, because quite frankly, everybody's watching this trial involving the sheriff's office. What's happening?
Yeah, so it's a federal civil trial. It's a civil lawsuit filed by a woman who was 17 when she was in the jail. She alleges that she was sexually assaulted and various things, sexual nature, happened to her in the jail at the hands of a detention officer. And the real issues that have been raised are the conditions that girls who are accused of fairly serious crimes, they end up in the adult jail. They don't have a special place to put them because there aren't that many. So they're basically on 23-hour lockdown in the medical unit. And the conditions are, you know, it seems unfair that the boys have a whole pod and they can have a lot more freedoms than the girls, and there's no good reason for that. There also haven't been cameras in this area of the jail for most of the time the sheriff was in charge of it, which allowed some things to happen that shouldn't have happened.
Like what?
Well, I mean, the sheriff's office doesn't dispute that this girl was improperly touched, was groped. They recommended that the DA charge this detention officer. The detention officer took the fifth, you know, when he was questioned about this. And, you know, so they had this one male detention officer who did not have training to deal with juveniles, supervising these female juveniles in a cell with no cameras. It's kind of a situation set up for someone to be able to abuse it. So that's what some of the testimony has been about. The former sheriff, Stanley Glanz, has been on the stand. The acting sheriff, Michelle Robinette, has been on the stand. And they're both trying to sort of explain how the situation developed in that manner.
You're a mother. As you watch this thing unfold, were there any, oh Lord, moments for you?
Yeah, there were many. I mean, I think just the statement by the acting sheriff that, you know, she was asked by the plaintiff's lawyer, why don't girls get to leave their cell and why don't they have the same privileges as boys? Why aren't there cameras? And it was basically, the answer was, well, there aren't very many of them. And, you know, how many girls does it take before you treat them as humanely as you're treating boys? You know, there shouldn't be any juveniles in our jail being held on charges like assault and battery and burglary and even robbery, but there are, I mean, in our day and age, and the county has a responsibility to treat them humanely. So I think that's the issue. In the end, the taxpayers could pay for the lapses if the jury sees that there were any. So it's something that we all should take interest in.
Any idea how long the trial might go?
I think it's been going about 5 days. I think it'll probably go at least until the end of Friday and maybe into you know, next week. So by the end we're done 6 or 7 days. It's a fairly involved. They have to prove that the sheriff knowingly violated their civil rights, that he could have done something.
Have you heard any of the testimony from the young women involved?
She hasn't testified yet. I've read her allegations. They did change. They were less serious at first, and they did change by the time that they got to the lawsuit. Their explanation is she was, you know, questioned by a law enforcement officer in the jail, and that she was intimidated. But she's expected to get on the stand either today or tomorrow.
Is she, one final question on this, is she still in custody?
Not on this case. I believe she is on another case. You know, this is a young woman from a broken home and that has a criminal past, a serious criminal past. Question is, you know, are the conditions in the jail going to keep allowing these things to happen? And we have to pick up the bill when they do. So
look forward to what you have to say next time around.
Thanks.
Okay, Oklahoma's under a $1+ billion shortage. And what was it Tip O'Neill said? Billion here, billion there. Pretty soon you're talking serious money.
I thought it was Everett Dirksen, but that you
Was
may
it
be right.
Dirksen? I thought Tip O'Neill also said that.
Yeah.
Nothing's been done.
Well, I talked to I was at the Capitol a couple of weeks ago and talked to a legislator. The Equalization Board in February said that the next budget would have a $1.3 billion shortfall. This guy was telling me off the record that it's going to be $1.5 billion, and they're looking at a 25% across the board cut to all state agencies. So
All agencies.
all agencies, yeah. Now that's not official, but he said that's what the financial planners are looking at right now. This would put the budget back to the same level it was when Frank Keating was governor.
I recall 3 or 4 years ago, my wife and I took Route 66 west. We found some pockets of belt tightening that had not been reported. For example, in Arizona, we saw state parks closed. The places where truckers could pull off and sleep closed. Instead, you'd find a mile and a mile and a half long stretch of 18-wheelers pulled off the side of the freeway, and they were sleeping there. We saw fewer and fewer state troopers, and as I read the local papers, began to absorb all the problems they were facing because of a major budget shortage there. You think that's going to happen in Oklahoma?
Well, Devon Energy, which is one of the largest natural gas producers in the world and located in Oklahoma City, last week announced 1,000 layoffs, 700 right there in Oklahoma City. So you have the oil price now, although the oil is back over $30 a barrel now, but you have that tamping down state revenues, and then you have people out of work, and the unemployment rate is going to go up, so that's going to aggravate the state revenue situation too.
You know, I just sit here and listen to the ripples go out from this. It just doesn't end. I mean, it goes on forever as far as Oklahoma's concerned.
I got a text from a friend of mine this morning who is a very exasperated mother with a elementary school child, and she says she's thinking about filing a class action lawsuit against the state for failing to provide adequate education. That's where, I mean, this is where it's coming to.
Yeah, that could happen.
Yeah.
That could seriously happen.
Although the LA Times had a report last week that said that in the last 7 years, 9,000 businesses have left California to relocate. We should have gotten some of those in Oklahoma. I don't know if we got any of them. But that's
I bet you we didn't.
Call centers.
Well, yeah.
That's probably true.
Whoop-de-doo.
Hey.
Well, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Ken
Yeah.
Miller, the state treasurer, says, we're at a point we can't cut this now. We can't cut anymore. But we can. If we're forced to, they can start laying off folks, can't they? At the state level.
Well, sure. By law, by the state constitution, I believe we have to have a balanced budget. Now, they have kind of tampered with that lately. 2 sessions ago, they borrowed $120 million to fix the state capitol, and last session, they borrowed $50 million in bonds for museums in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any sense of anybody wanting to borrow any money this time. And last time they looked at the reserves that each agency had and tapped into those, and I think you'll see some more of that.
Is anybody that you guys have heard of, is anyone talking about ways to enhance revenue in Oklahoma? Is anybody talking about diversification at all?
I've just heard people saying that they should consider not cutting the taxes as planned.
That was the thing I was going to bring up. That bill has moved out of committee now.
Yeah.
It's headed for the legislature.
That's a sign of how bad things are.
You think they'll pass? I don't think it will.
I don't think it will.
No, I don't think it will either. The Speaker and the Senate Pro Tem have already said it's dead in the water.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean, it would be viewed as voting for a tax increase,
Right.
essentially. I think that's what they need to consider, but I don't think it's going to happen.
And Lord, they don't want their constituents to see who would be against that
Right.
coming next election time. Joy Hoffmeister, our education secretary, says that the budget crisis could lead to fewer teachers, bigger classes, and a reduction in advanced courses. But the Tulsa World carried a story that said that the Tulsa school superintendent is now talking about the possibility of a 4-day week, class week, plus the elimination of school buses except for handicapped children.
And yet there's legislation going through also that would raise teacher salaries. So it doesn't really add up. You know, I'm glad that Deborah Gist at Tulsa Public Schools is looking for creative ways to mitigate this budget crunch. But you can't have everything. I don't know how I don't know anybody that says we don't want to give teachers raises. That's pretty popular. But something's got to be cut in the education budget, probably in order to match the shortfall and to still give teachers. You know, the governor said a $3,000 raise. Two other bills said $5,000, $10,000, and that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see where that's going to come from. And, you know, just speaking as a parent, when my kids were in school, if there was no school bus, that would make it very hard for me to,
I just can't
get
believe.
my job.
I mean, I'm not calling anybody a liar.
Yeah.
I just find it so hard to believe that all of a sudden, wow, are we there? I mean, when obviously
Apparently.
we are.
Yeah, the 4-day school week, I could see some logic in that, and I know there are schools that have done that, and so as long as you get the same amount of instructional time in, you know, but the issue is always, what do you do with your kid?
Got to take a break, and I'll be right back with more from these folks right after this.